Today I'm joined by Lesli Doares of Foundations Coaching. Leslie, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. I hope you are.
I am. Thank you so much. Can you share a little bit about your background and how you got started in your coaching world?
Oh, yes. It's like, how much time do we have? Yeah, it's very interesting because I started out in a very completely different place. I actually started out, my very first job out of college was with Merrill Lynch. So I was in the back office, and then I moved into retail, and where I spent a lot of time until I started hating Christmas. And that's where I kind of really learned that throwing money at things only goes so far, right? That if you don't have a good environment, then it doesn't matter how much you're going to pay people, they are eventually going to burn out, they're going to get tired. So I ended up going back to grad school, um, and getting my master's degree in industrial organizational psychology because I really wanted to work for businesses, and I had a minor in human resources because that to me was really where my heart was, right? It's like, how do we make this better? Well, that was in the early 90s. There was a recession. I ended up moving with my husband to a very, to a college town in Eastern Washington where there were no businesses. It was like, well, okay. And while I was there, I got much more into wanting to deal with relationships, personal relationships. And so I eventually went back and got, my marriage and family therapy licensure, and I started working. And one of my earliest clients was a 6 year old little girl who was brought to me with anxiety. Well, of course, she had anxiety because she was the proverbial rope in her divorced parents' tug of war. They had been divorced since when she was two, and anything you could think of that could possibly be thrown around in a case existed in this case. And I kept thinking, I can't give this 6 year old any tools, right? She's six, she's got no control over her life. So I kept thinking I needed to get in earlier. So then it was like, let me work with the parents. And so I did couples work for a really, really long time. And I've switched since to really being a marriage coach, specifically a marriage coach for men, because I really think that we can't ignore 50% of the population if we want successful relationships. And so that's really, very, very condensed version of how I got from point A to point B.
That's quite a journey you've been on. I love how all the pieces connect. So, what does your business look like today? Where are you focusing your energy right now?
Right now, I'm really focusing my energy on supporting men in their relationships, and I really do take an approach of leadership. And by leadership, I don't mean that that it's the you must obey him because not because of that, but it's actually to try to help them really create this co-create this team where, because in a marriage, it is the only relationship, intimate relationship that we actually enter into as equals. I mean, we're living with somebody, our lives are completely entwined with them, and the only other similar relationships are parent-child or siblings, but there's always a hierarchy. But in a marriage, you are co-equal, and so, and how do you navigate that? And and a lot of that comes in the my view of what leadership is. Leadership isn't dragging people kicking and screaming your way. It's actually knowing how to confidently figure out who you are, present yourself, hold on to yourself, and invite people to follow you.
I like that. Yeah. How does one lead with empathy, boundaries, and clarity in these relationships?
Okay, well, yeah, there you go. And this is, I think that the way that this is done is that you're grounded in who you are and what your beliefs are, how you want to be in the world, and then you also are able to see the bigger picture, that it's not just about you are one part of it, and you're an important part of it, but you're not the only part of it. And so empathy is when you can realize that your experiences are valid, but so is the other person's experience, and their experience may be very different from yours. And so empathy is really, how do we find that common ground? How do we find that place where I can see you and value you even though you're different from me? And boundaries come into that, where that's the protection of me, right? Boundaries aren't something I do to you. There's something I have for me that helps keep me grounded, that helps keep me focused in a way that's feels good to me. And you know, and by definition, when I talk with people about boundaries, pushback is a feature of boundary setting, not a flaw, right? If I set a boundary, somebody isn't going to like it. And I have to be clear enough to be able to hold that boundary and not be worried about its impact. Now, again, I want to do it in a way that's inviting, in a way that is reasonable. But at some point in time, if somebody keeps pushing, then it's going to be like, the answer is no. And please respect my boundary. And you're telling me who you are if you don't.
So true. How do you think relationship stress impacts decision making, leadership, presence, and outcomes?
Oh, that is such an important question, because, and what most people don't realize, and I am very grounded in biology and neurology. And there's some really fascinating things going on, you know, um, about learning about how our brains work, and how our brains impact what we do. And when we are emotionally stirred up, our primal brain is the one in charge. We are in fight, flight, or flee mode. Sorry, fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that will determine the decisions that we're making. If I am in my primal brain, then the only thing I care about is being alive in the next 5 seconds. I can't worry about 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 years from now. If I'm not alive in 5 seconds, then it's all gone. And that's the decision that I'm making at the time. Um, the problem is that when our brains are wired for threat of, I'm being chased by a lion, generally not what most of us are running into these days. When our primal brain gets triggered, my primal brain gets triggered because my kid did something I didn't like, my boss did something I didn't like, my wife did something I didn't like, right? It's like, nobody's going to die, but our bodies don't understand that. When our primal brain is in charge, our decision making is completely emotional, not cognitive. So the goal is, how do we get our cognitive brain back online? And that is a skill set.
So let's dive into that a little bit. What does that skill set look like, or the tools used to get out of that primal state?
Well, the first thing we have to do is be able to recognize that we're in it, which is really challenging. We were talking about boundaries, and I was actually taking a course on boundaries, and the person who was teaching the course said that our primal brain is scanning our environment for threat 9 times per second. And as soon as I heard that, I went, oh, that explains so much of what's going on, right? It's constantly moving. The problem is, it's not assessing things accurately. So, so when we can figure out, when we can get in touch with what our body is doing to tell us that I'm under threat. So for some people, it's feeling in the pit of their stomach, or like the back, the hair on the back of their neck, or or they get tight. There's some physiological response to this. So identifying what your own personal one is really important. And then for those of us, and again, all this research that's been done years ago, it's like, count to 10 before you open your mouth, right? The reason why you do that is because it's that time to give your cognitive brain time to click in, to go, no, that's just a stick in the woods. That's not a snake, right? But we have to be able to reconnect, breathing, pausing. Um, these are the kinds of things that kick that back in, where we can then go, okay, let me take a look at all of the factors, not just the one that is setting off my flight or fight mode. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, I think the big challenge is tuning in, giving yourself time and space to tune into your body, and disregard that immediate impulse to react in whatever way you're naturally inclined to react. And
Yeah. Because the goal is to respond, not to react.
yeah, so key, so key. How has your definition of leadership changed over the years?
Oh wow. I think it's gotten, well, it's done two things. It's gotten broader and narrower at the same time, right? Because leadership, I believe, is really, by broader, there's lots of different ways to lead. There's lots of different ways to get to the same goal. And one definition for me of leadership is being willing to take in information that doesn't feel really good to us. It's like, that initial reaction of, oh yeah, don't, it's like, whoa, take a step back, breathe. What is actually out there, right? And leadership to me, but by narrowing it down, is really about being authentic to who we are. And that doesn't mean we can't ever change our minds or any of that, but it's actually that we have a grounding compass, right? Where is it that I want to go? Because the clearer I can be, then it's easier for me to convey that to other people and invite them to come along. It's really interesting. My husband and I have been taking ballroom dance classes for several years. And and I was a ballet dancer for a long time. So when you're working as a partner, when you're dancing with somebody, you each have to do your part, right? But in the leader, whoever's leading, is inviting you to go in a certain direction. And if they're really confident about it, they don't have to yank you, but they do it with such an invitation that your body just goes there because it can't go anyplace else. So that, to me, so that's part of how my leadership definition has been expanded, is in these two physiological areas. When you do ballet, when you watch a ballet, the guy doesn't just pick her up brute force. She helps. She holds herself. She's part of the process. So leadership is a give and take. It's not, you will follow me or else. It's actually, here's my vision. Please come along with me. And I make it so compelling that you want to do that.
I love the analogy, that dance analogy, and like you said, it's an invitation, it's a partnership, it's a dance between the leader and who might be following. There is true partnership and synergy in there.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's a give and take.
For sure, for sure. What are some of the biggest communication mistakes couples make, and how do these mirror mistakes leaders make with their teams?
Well, one is being wedded to your position being right. When I work with people, I do not do right or wrong. I do productive and unproductive. If it's getting us to our goal, great, let's keep doing it. If it's not getting us to our goal, I don't care how right I think it is. We're going to end up in the wrong place. And so it really is about, how do we move through this? Um, and that's one of the things that, in a lot of cases, it's the actual language we use. When I work with my clients, I have been told by more than one client that the most challenging task I give them is to not use the word you unless it's, I love you, you're wonderful, I'm glad you're in my life. Then please use the word you to your heart's content. But you did. you know, and don't ever pair it with why. Why did you? It's like, okay, now we're automatically that's a shot across the bow. I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to go to my closet, get my sword and my shield, and we're going to battle because I have been attacked. And so using the word I or we, this isn't working. Can we try something else? Or, I'm feeling really hurt by this. Can we talk about it? Right. So at least, again, I'm inviting somebody. Um, and part of this is not managing our own emotional reactivity. Something happens, I get hot, or I get scared, or I get one of these things, and then I'm reacting as opposed to, huh, did my partner really mean that the way it came out? Can I give my partner or my employee or whoever I'm talking with the benefit of the doubt that they are not ill-willed, that they are not out to get me? But here's one of the biggest things that I think people don't understand. Again, biologically, we are hardwired to pay attention to things that can harm us. So our negativity bias is way higher. There's, the happiness studies, there have been some studies that have been done that it takes 3 to 5 positive interactions to balance out one negative one. Yeah. And so when I, and because, and, so I'm going to pay attention to the quote unquote negative things that are happening in my life because my brain interprets them as life threatening, potentially life threatening, even though they're not. But that's just the way we're wired. And so it's, how do I question that, when my partner snapped at me, or, I remember years ago, my son, who was not always the most prompt person, was applying for colleges. And I asked him about the deadline for one of the schools. And he looks at me and goes, Mom, when did you get to be such a nag? And my husband from the other room started laughing. Did did not handle that well. At the moment, what he said hurt me, but I didn't say anything at the time. But later on that night at dinner, I said to him, remember that conversation this morning? And Drew made the comment and you laughed. He said, yeah. I said, that really hurt my feelings. And he was very apologetic because my husband is a good guy. I knew he never would intentionally hurt me. So it's like, he doesn't know something. But if I didn't have that interpretation of him, that would have been an invitation for a fight.
Interesting. I think we touched a little bit on this, but I want to dig into it a little bit more. What tools can people use to stay grounded during these high stakes conversations, these emotional conversations that we get into?
Two really important things: breathing and pausing, and they're both kind of the same thing. Because I so wish that there was a way to not have a reaction. I think the only way to not have a reaction is to be dead. So I don't think that's a good idea. But because we are going to react. And so understanding what our triggers are is really important. What, I've told my husband, I said, you can tease me about these things over here. Do not tease me about these over here. I don't have the capacity to handle that. So there's a request made. But the first thing is, what gets me upset? What do I know? And then how do I breathe through it? There's a tool that people use. It's called reflective listening. Nobody talks this way, although I think everybody should, especially when we're having serious conversations, is about reframing what I think I heard before I respond to it, right? So that does two things. One, it allows me to grab whatever emotional reaction I'm going to have. And two, it actually also make sure that I understood what the other person was trying to say. So an example would be, so in that conversation with my husband, he could have said to me, so what I hear is This morning when Drew made that comment and I reacted laughing, that wasn't okay. Right. So that gives him the opportunity to make sure that he understood what I was upset about and not react, not react to it, but actually give himself the pause so that his higher order brain could click in and not just be in his primal brain. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think just from a communication point of view, I think if we don't do that reflective listening, and mirror back what people say, there are a lot of assumptions that go on, especially, I know it for myself, but, it just helps clear the air. And, if you do misunderstand a situation, it allows for an opportunity to have a discussion around that and say, no, that's not what I, that's not what I said, or this isn't what I meant.
Because the other thing that people don't understand is that what somebody says is not necessarily what somebody else hears. So, for those of us of a certain age who grew up playing a game called telephone, where you'd have this line of people and they would send the information down, and usually what came out at the end of the line bore no resemblance to what started with because it all goes through our own filter. We're either paying attention to certain words or certain ideas or certain tones because that's how we're wired, or our experience or whatever. So it all comes through a lens. And we assume, we all know there's a famous expression about assuming, we assume that we got it correct. And so we are going to function on that fact without ever bothering to stop and check. It's like, well, wait, was that what was said or what was meant? Which is why when people get into these, well, you said this, no, I did. It's like, stop it. Unless you have a video camera or tape recorder or some, objective recording of, it's like neither one of you is going to remember exactly what happened. Memory is horrible. I mean, our memories are just completely inaccurate most of the time. So it's like, you know, um, and we can argue about that, but that's not going to get us anywhere because I'm not going to convince you that you don't remember something a certain way. So it's like, is it possible that it could have been meant this way? Which is why when I talk with people, if you can give somebody the benefit of the doubt, that's usually the best way. You could be wrong, and by the way, that will come out at some point in the future. But if you give people, if you treat people like they meant well, most of the time they do. But if they don't, then you've given them that benefit, and then it's theirs to do with what they want to.
So true. What are three principles every leader can take away from healthy marriages?
Um, so that everybody has their own experience, and to be willing to um, investigate that. I don't i don't have to agree with you, or it doesn't have to be that I would react the same way, but if I can understand, oh, that's what somebody's taking away, then it's a growth opportunity for me. um, the other and something else would be that I'm not the only one involved in this, right? Even if I'm the boss, um, getting buy-in from other people is incredibly important, and the only way to get buy-in is to listen to where they're struggling or where they don't understand or where they disagree. um, and also there is and here's the harder one, um, not to take their reactions or responses personally. That one is really, really hard. It's like, oh, one of the things that I tell people is nobody can make you feel a certain way. You are choosing to feel that way. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the choice that you're incorrect, but it's like I could do something that maybe somebody doesn't like, but they're choosing to get angry about it, or they're, you know. And again, I think it helps to listen to why somebody might be feeling that way, but I don't cause that. I don't make you angry. I don't make now. Again, that doesn't mean that my behavior hasn't played a role in it. This is kind of a really challenging concept for most people to grasp. Um, you know, and I wouldn't have done that, but you made me mad. It's like, okay. And even if I am angry, my behavior is always mine, right? You know, I tell people, I grew up in LA. It's where I learned to drive. Where I live now, the drivers make me a little crazy. And so when somebody does something, that I don't think was a smart thing to do, or I don't appreciate it, on my best days, I just go, hope that made you feel better. Have a nice day. Usually, to my children's dismay and chagrin, not very attractive words come out of my mouth, and they tell me, Mom, they can't hear you. Or I could chase them down and beat them with a tire iron. I have never chosen option number three, but so my behavior is always on me. And so that's really why getting a hold of our reactivity before we act is so incredibly important.
Do you find people have a hard time swallowing that pill, that they're that acknowledging and taking responsibility for their behavior um, is solely on them and not necessarily extenuating or external circumstances? And how do you help them work through that? Or
Well, yeah, it's a very challenging um, position, and one that I don't always do well. Even though I know about it. So it's like, because I'm a human being. Um, and I remember once walking up the stairs screaming at the top of my lungs at my children. I mean, the kind of screaming where your throat hurts, and standing outside myself going, this isn't effective. I mean, literally, I had an out of body experience. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, it's really hard. And again, part of that is using the tools, understanding, learning the tools, mastering the techniques of managing myself, because that's really the only person that I have any control over. I mean, one of the things that I hear all the time is so and so is trying to control me. No, they're trying to control their environment. You're just part of that environment. They're not trying to control you. And so when you can separate yourself out from that and be able to go, oh, in this circumstance, here is what my goal is, right? And it really is about having a goal of how do I manage my own self. And I'm going to tell people, I have a hot, fast, nasty temper. Not something I'm particularly proud of, but something I acknowledge. And I have spent many years working to manage that. Not 100%. There's times when it's like, you do not want to be around me, but that is my goal, right? Because when I'm out of control, I'm contributing to the chaos. Whereas if I can go, okay, take a step back, breathe, figure out what happened, and then make a choice. How do I want to respond to this? What would move us in a better direction? And it's really hard because other people can really be doing things that really aren't okay. And and sometimes we don't have real power to do anything about it, except we do have the power to keep it from impacting how we want to be in the world.
so true, and I love that. You've clearly come a long way. What's exciting you, and what are you looking forward to building next?
um, yeah, that there's a challenge with that. What I really want to do is to provide more people with the tools to be successful. I mean, one of the things, nobody has to go to relationship 101 school. And people don't understand that there really are tools and techniques and skills that you can master where you can be that calming influence, you can be that leader, you can, you know, bring the temperature down and move people together, whether it's in your family, or whether it's in a bigger way. And it's, you know, I think it's one of the things where we will naturally follow people who really can present their viewpoint in a way that makes sense and is inviting. Here, let's all get on board and go here. But also being willing to say, oh, didn't see that coming, let's retrench, let's take a step back. And so really it's about providing people, especially men, because I think in our society, especially when it comes to relationships, I don't think men get a lot of the support. You know, in fact, I'm constantly correcting people. My husband did it just over the weekend, or where he was talking about men just being large, you know, being kids. It's like, no, you're not. Stop that. Men are not children. Stop that. You know, but it's really empowering them to be partners. And, you know, because we tend to go in these opposite directions, right? It's this or 180 degrees opposite. I'm a wimp or I have to be a bully. It's like, no, when you're grounded, you don't have to be either one. And those are the people that get followed. And, you know, and it's giving, you know, because marriage has changed, you know, and it's now a partnership. I mean, it started out, I mean, people don't understand the history of it. You know, it's like, but it's really now a partnership, and it's an equal partnership, which means neither person should be in charge. We need to be working on this together. So my goal is to actually help men step up and step into that and know how to interact in a way that is respectful and respected.
I love that. Lesli, thank you so much for sharing your insight and your stories. Where can our listeners find you online?
They can find me all over the place. The problem is spelling my name. But anyway, they can find me. I have two websites, either foundationscoachingnc.com, or the one that I am really focusing on is called theherohusband.com. They can find me. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube. I do a video every week on YouTube, so they can find me there. You know, I'm just out there.
We'll be sure to have all the links in our show notes. And thank you again for joining me on the Leadership Lab. It's a real pleasure.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending your time with me today on the Leadership Lab podcast. My hope is that this conversation sparked a new perspective or reinforced something you already knew. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity and intention.